decoys and you're an electrical engineer. You don't just work for Verizon, you have a multiple set of skills. And with an information-based economy, with the internet, you can make money doing any one of these four things. Matter of fact, if your duck decoys are as good as you think they are, and you want to set up a quick little corporation, set up an LLC and advertise them on the internet, you may find that not only will all of your income come from duck decoys and none of it from Verizon, you may find yourself as a multimillionaire. The company that you set up, you're selling duck decoys to people in Scotland and you're selling them to people in Madagascar. You just drop them in a box and ship them. You may find yourself being a multimillionaire because of your skill carving duck decoys. That's a completely different way to think about the world, and Washington is terrified of this kind of thing because that guy didn't have to ask permission for any of this. He just went out and did it. This scares the living daylights out of these control freaks. By the way, these people in Washington, most of them are Democrats, a lot of Republicans are starting to lean this way. There's something wrong with them. They're genetic defectives. They're mutants. They're mutants. They're like they're like the Walking Dead. They have this extra chromosome or something that makes them absolutely wired to tell other people what to do. They're just not nice people. They have to tell other people what to do. That's their entire life. That's all they care about. And when they find out that this guy is now no longer working for Verizon and paying union dues or whatever, he's actually selling duck decoys all around the world, terrifies them. It scares the daylights out of them. So the reason I wanted to give you guys this background is to tell you, if you think that you're in the Tea Party and you think you're an activist and you think that this is just running out the clock, that these guys are going to win no matter what, and what's the point of getting up? You might as well just go home and relax and live out your life in peace and stock up on ammo and beans. You know, if you're getting to that place, I don't blame you one bit, but I'm telling you, you have to hang on. You have to hang on. Because this future is coming and somebody's going to have to be here to show people what it means to be free again after 150 years of this kind of oppression and totalitarianism coming from Washington. Somebody's going to have to be around here to design this free future that's coming one way or another. And we have to get in front of these ideas. Because the one thing that the pop culture and the liberals and the Democrats have done so effectively is portray us as a bunch of old people with old ideas that are always looking to the past and never looking to the future. And to some degree, we help them make this case. Because all of us love the Tea Party, we all love the tri-corner hats, we all love the muskets, we all love the Minutemen and all that other stuff, because we understand who those guys were. We understand what those things mean. But most voters don't understand this at all. And when most voters look at Tea Party iconography, the images and stuff, and they see the hats and the wigs and the muskets, they just think, man, that's 300 years old. What the hell are we talking about this stuff for? They don't make the connection between the costume and the philosophy, so all they see is the costume, and the costume looks ridiculous. But this is what we're going to be talking about today. We've got to talk about the way that we can change the messaging without changing the message, because I would never for an instant tell any of you to give up on your core beliefs, because I share those core beliefs. I 100% get it. I get limited government. I get individual rights. I get individual responsibilities. I get the First Amendment and I get the Second Amendment. I get all of this stuff. So I'm not asking anybody to change what they believe. On the contrary, what I'm trying to do is to find a better way to sell these ideas of what we believe. So I'll give you a quick example in terms of imagery, right, and marketing. We talk about the Founding Fathers. We talk about guys like George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and all these cats. And we see them in powdered wig with waistcoats and vests and tri-corner hats. And other people look at them and go, man, that's as square as it can be. But here's the actual fact about the Founding Fathers. These guys were the most stylish guys on the face of the earth. They were the most best-dressed, heavily armed people on the face of the earth. George Washington, even though he was at war with Great Britain, George Washington, by a third party, sent a request to London tailors. And he said, I want 4 waistcoats in the latest design, I want the most fashionable colors, and I want the most beautiful, ornate buttons I can find without them appearing ostentatious. George Washington was probably the richest man in the country, might have been. He was certainly the best dressed man in the country. These were fashion plates. And the musket that everybody mocks today, the long rifle, was the most accurate, deadly weapon on the face of the earth. So when we think about our Founding Fathers, we got to see them not as they look to us, we got to see them as they look to each other. And we got to tell the American people, no, no, no. The Founding Fathers were the most best-dressed, the richest, and the most deadly guys on the face of the earth. If you want to think about how they would look today, the Founding Fathers would be dressed in $10,000 Armani suits, they'd be wearing $1,200 shoes, and then have an AR-15 with night vision target acquisition lasers slung over their shoulders because they mean business. That's what George Washington is. George Washington is a 6'4" man who has got a $1,000 haircut. He's wearing a $10,000 suit. He's wearing $1,200 shoes, and he's got an AR-15 with a target designating laser on the front and night vision scope. That's who George Washington was to the American people. Once you tell people about it, they go, "Oh, that's pretty cool. I never thought of him that way. I thought he was an old guy with bad teeth." No, he was not. He was not an old guy with bad teeth. He was a rich guy. He was a brilliant guy. He was a god who walked there with 6'4". People used to worship him as a god. And he was a man who had so much character that he said, "No, this is a new country and we're going to set new standards. You are not going to address me as His Excellency, Your Excellency, Mr. President, Your Excellency, the President." That was what we would call the President, His Excellency. No, the first President said, "You're not going to call me His Excellency. You're going to call me Mr. President. We've had enough of kings. We've had enough of the elite. We've had enough of barons and earls and emperors and all these other things that Barack Obama wants to be." Those are old ideas. The new ideas are civilization, local, dispersed, limited government. That's a new idea. So, if you think about it, they're going to lose. And I like to think of Barack Obama's re-election as Tyrannosaurus Rex, standing there in the swamp, because he has spindly arms. Have you noticed that? T-Rex and Barack Obama have three things in common. They have spindly little arms, they got big teeth, and they're both their names mean Tyrant King. So there he sits, crowing in his glory, and behind him in the sky is that light of that incoming asteroid that's going to wipe the field. Just going to wipe them all out and leave the little mammals, the little tiny, not glorious, not big, plain, ordinary creatures that live low to the ground. They're going to survive, and these big, flashy dinosaurs are just going to die out. It's going to happen. That's why we have to hang on. So, let's talk a little bit more about the messaging, because when we get down to the messaging, we have a choice now. We can either get in front of these ideas, like menu-driven government and parallel structures and all these other things I'll talk about in a minute, and we can claim them as ours. Or we can wait till the Democrats steal them from us like they've stolen everything else. Sooner or later, once these ideas start to work, they're going to claim them. I say we get out in front of them now. I say we get out in front of them right now and we go to the people of this country, especially the young people of this country, and we say, we're not going to talk about Republicans and Democrats anymore. We're not going to talk about liberals and conservatives. These are old ideas. They're not helping anybody. Everybody knows the country's coming apart. Everybody knows that the economy's falling apart. Everybody knows we're spending money we don't have. So now we're going to talk about a different set of camps. We're not going to talk about the red camp or the blue camp or the Republicans and the Democrats. We're going to talk about the people who want to tell other people what to do versus the people that want to be left alone. Which camp are you in? Do you want to tell other people what to do, or do you want to be left alone? You start posing the question that way, the numbers break down 9-5-5. Nobody wants to say, well, I'm one of the people who wants to tell other people what to do. Really? What gives you the right to do that? Where do you get the authority to tell me what to do? Are you an aristocrat? Were you born an earl? Do you have a letter of mark? Is there a country estate that's been passed down for 50 generations? Where do you get the authority to tell me what to do? What makes you think you know how to run my life better than I do? Who do you think you are? Now all of a sudden the cool kids are the ones who want to be left alone, right? Isn't that what we want? Isn't that the essence of what conservatism is? Ultimately, do the minimum that we pay you for and leave us alone. Okay. Now we outnumber these people 9-1, 10-1, probably. We'll never lose again if we frame elections like this. Which party are you? I'm the party of the people that want to be left alone. What party are you? Are you in the leave them alone party, or are you in the tell them what to do party? I'm in the tell people what to do party. Really? How incredibly uncool. What's the matter with you? Explain to me this genetic defect that you have that gives you the sense that you know what's better for this guy than he does. What's wrong with you? What a rotten, awful, miserable person you are. I'm ashamed to be seen in the same room as you. It actually gets very easy. It really does. And so we have to ask ourselves where things are going, both as the Tea Party and as the Republican Party. Because the one thing we learned from this last election is, I want to say this very clearly, I think Mitt Romney was the most qualified man ever to run for president. In terms of what this country needed, in terms of a guy who could look at, this isn't working, this has to go, this is over budget, this needs to be scaled back, this program is working, more of this, but these things have to be cut and we have to make these tough decisions. There's not a better man who could have been elected than Mitt Romney. And in terms of his personal character, just as a man, I think you probably have to go back to George Washington to find a better man as a candidate for president than Mitt Romney. Those two things said, Mitt Romney would have made an excellent manager for the country, but he clearly wasn't a leader of the country because Mitt Romney not only didn't believe in Republican values or conservative values, he lived them. His whole life story was one of them, but he couldn't defend them, and he certainly couldn't sell them. Because Mitt Romney not only didn't believe in these things, Mitt Romney didn't even believe in Mitt Romney. He didn't even believe his own life story. Mitt Romney didn't post his tax returns until, what, a month or two before the election? After the Democrats had spent a year saying, what are you hiding? What are you hiding? What are you hiding? What are you hiding? What was he hiding?
Success.
Success! He was hiding success. He was ashamed of the fact that he was worth all this money. He was hiding the fact that he didn't want people to know exactly how much money he made. But is it a mystery that Mitt Romney's a rich guy? Is this something that's going to get out? See, this is insanity. He didn't believe his own message. If he really understood what we are talking about as conservatives, if he really got it in his bones, it wouldn't have been something to run away from. It would have been an absolute point of pride. Mitt Romney's dad hung sheetrock, right? He started from poverty. His dad amassed a fortune and political power. He handed it down to Mitt Romney, and then Mitt Romney, through an act of absolute character, in my opinion, said, I'm going to give it away. What? I'm going to give it away, Dad. What are you going to give it away for? I worked my life for this. I'm going to give it away because what I get for myself in life, I want to be able to say I got for myself. I did through my own hard work. You can't write a story like that. You can't write a story that good. But Mitt Romney ran from his own life story. He just ran from it. If I'd been Mitt Romney, I would have said something like this. The American people, you know, the press, of course, are always trying to stick you with these gotcha questions. So one of them, I saw them ask Mitt Romney something like this verbatim. They said, Mr. Romney, you're worth $200 million. How can you possibly connect with the American people when you're this rich? And if I was Mitt Romney, I would have said, I'm not worth $200 million. I'm worth $250 million. Don't take $50 million out of my bank. I kind of worked very hard for that $50 million. I'll tell you something else, too. I put my tax returns up on my website before I ever ran for office because I'm very proud of the fact that I'm worth $250 million. I worked very, very hard, and I started from nothing to get $250 million, and I'm not done yet. But as you can see from my tax returns, over the course of the first half of my life anyway, I paid $80 million in taxes. Who am I kidding? It's probably closer to $100 million. I paid $100 million in taxes. I'm proud to pay $100 million in taxes. I'll expect I'll pay another $100 million before I die. I paid the minimum amount of taxes that I can legally pay, but I paid $100 million in taxes. So my opponent, Mr. Obama here, prior to becoming president, filled out forms for people in Chicago. And the forms he helped them fill out were forms to get benefits. But Barack Obama didn't pay any money for those benefits. You know who paid for the benefits that he filled out forms for people to get? I did. I paid those benefits. I paid $100 million in taxes. I paid $100 million in food stamps, $100 million in Social Security, $100 million in Medicaid, $100 million in welfare benefits. I paid it. Not him, me. You want to talk about helping poor people? I've paid $100 million into the system that poor people use every day. And I'm proud that I was able to pay those taxes and help those people, but that's not the real reason that we did it. I paid $100 million in taxes because I made more money than that in profit. I've got $250 million in the bank, but nobody gets to keep everything. There's no company in the world or executive in the world that takes all the revenues and keeps it. I've got $250 million because my associates and I have generated billions, tens, 20, 30 billion dollars in revenue went to paychecks. So there's 10,000 or 100,000 people that have had their houses paid for, their mortgages, their college tuitions, their student loans, their vacations, their snowmobiles, their water skis. All this stuff has been paid for by working for us. We paid them salaries. This is just a sliver of all the wealth that we've generated for everybody else. Of course I'm worth $250 million. I think everybody in America should be worth $250 million. I think the entire idea of this country is that anybody can start with nothing and make $250 million if you want to work that hard. If you don't, that's fine. You don't have to. But if you want to work that hard, you should be able to do it. Of course I'm worth $250 million. If that guy had come out and said that, he would have won All 57 states. They don't have some. We would beat Ronald Reagan by 8 states. Ronald Reagan, by the way, last time we ran on actual, authentic conservative values was in 2010 when the Tea Party came to stop Obamacare, and we had the second biggest upset in history. That's the last time we ran as conservatives. The time before that we ran as actual conservatives was in 1984. We won 49 states. There's only one state we didn't carry. 5,000 votes. 5,000 votes from Minnesota, and we would have run the table. We would have gotten every single electoral vote on the table because we ran as conservatives. So this is the last thing I'll talk about before we get into some of the fun stuff. We are going to be coming into this information age economy. That's going to happen. It's happening every day, and every day that goes by, the world looks more like the world we like and less like the world that they like. That's really good news for us. So the question is, how do we get from here to there? The problem is that there are so many people living in this existing government house. We talk about things like we're going to end welfare, we're going to end Social Security, we're going to end this, we're going to end that, and the American people hear this and they go, there's no way we can vote for this. My grandma depends on her Social Security. You can't cut Social Security. And those people are right. Because there has been 50, 60, 70 years of dependency now built into American government, and you can't simply stop it overnight. You can say it's appropriate to stop it, but you can't stop it overnight. That building may be old and rickety and teetering and falling apart, and we may be building a new, better, smaller, nicer house next to it. But we can't demolish that old house while people are still living in it. We have to phase them into this new economy, this new government that is much, much smaller than the existing government. So how do you get people to move from this old building into the new one? How do you do it? You can't just demolish the old building. People live there. How do you get them to move? Well, you have to think of it this way. Think of America as the Titanic, and think of the election of Barack Obama as hitting the iceberg. And then think about this. The Titanic hits the iceberg, and as it's sinking, as it's going down by the bow, they've still got some engine power, so they put the engines into reverse, back her up 4 or 5 miles, get a good head of steam going, and hit the iceberg again. That's exactly what we did. So the Titanic is going down, so what do? Well, you have to get to the lifeboats, right? You have to get to the lifeboats, and the lifeboats will keep people alive long enough for the new ship to arrive on the scene to rescue people. So what do lifeboats look like in this new economy? Let's take an example that everybody can relate to. Most people know that public schools, which used to be the envy of the world, American public schools, used to turn out the highest test scores, the happiest students, engineers, scientists. We went to the moon on public schools. But those schools have been long gone, utterly destroyed by progressivism. So that's the Titanic, public schools. That's the ship that's sinking. What are the lifeboats? Until we get a better set of schools. What are we doing now? That's a lifeboat to save kids from a sinking education system. Homeschooling, right? School choice, but homeschooling. Homeschooling is a parallel structure. It exists parallel to the public school system. It's not connected to it, but it's like a scaffold. So if this building is burning, you can go from the building to homeschooling. I don't think anybody thinks homeschooling is the long-term solution. What we want is, we want schools that educate children and teach them the fundamentals like math and science and reading and history, and not all this sociological crap. Those are the schools we want, but we can't just get to those schools because these guys have so much power now. So homeschools are a great example of a parallel structure that exists next to the existing structure. I want to say one thing about homeschooling because it's just a really important point to make. We have, in this country now, 2 generations of kids who have never gotten an education at all. The kids who are in public schools now can't read, they can't write, they can't think. They can't concentrate on a problem for more than 2 or 3 minutes. And we're told the solution is, no, we're going to make them all have iPads. Oh, that's really going to help. That's really going to help. That's going to give them a chance to update their Facebook status when they're supposed to be studying math. There's an ad in California. It's for this kind of, this progressive view of education. And it's like, it's a kid in a school, and somebody's writing something on a board, he's looking bored. And it's I think it's a Hispanic kid. And so the teacher takes a kite, and they go out to the field, they fly a kite. And the kid's out in the, he's not in the classroom anymore, he's out in the field flying a kite. And the thing says, make physics fun, make math sing. And I thought, what does this kid learn about physics from being out in the field flying a kite? Why does the kite fly? Because of physics. Yeah, but what makes the kite fly? Physics does. Can you explain to me how the kite flies? It's physics. Kid's not getting an education, and teaching him how to fly a kite is not teaching him physics. The way you teach aerodynamics and Bernoulli's principle, which is why a kite does in fact fly, is you get on a blackboard and you explain the principles. Then if you want to take a kite out and show how it works, that's one thing. But this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. We want real schools that teach real things. So we have this entire generation of kids who thinks that kites fly because of physics, and they don't know anything about anything. And it's this incredible need on one side of the balance pan. And on the other side of the balance pan, in terms of homeschooling, we have got the single greatest untapped natural resource in America. And that's our retired people. We have people who've been retired for 10, 15, 20 years who have a lifetime of skills, and no one to teach them to. These are people who went to the moon. These are people who built the Golden Gate Bridge. You cannot build the Golden Gate Bridge today. We don't know how. I had a friend after the last event come up to me, not a friend, a new friend, said, you know, we were trying to rebuild P-51 Mustangs for restoration, and we couldn't bend the metal. We just couldn't figure out how. Turns out there was a guy who was 86 years old who worked for North American Aviation. He said, what you need to do is, instead of on the mold, you got to put a mixture of 3-in-1 oil and WD-40 and something like that. And he said, then it won't stick, and that's how you do it. And they couldn't have done it otherwise. They could never have figured it out. But this one guy who's still alive passed that information down, and now that information will be repeated. Now kids who are engineers who are 20 and 30 learn how to do this, and now they'll be able to hold on to this knowledge for 40 or 50 years. If you think about homeschooling, the idea that you should have to teach all of your kids everything is nuts. The fact that a housewife is willing to homeschool their children is a sign of how desperately awful those schools are. But with the things like this information age economy that I was talking about with the internet, you don't have to teach every night. If you know something about history, you can teach history on Thursdays. Mrs. Johnson can teach biology on Tuesdays. And Mr. Evans, who was an engineer for 50 years, can teach a little bit of math and a little bit of stress analysis. Or a guy who was a history teacher, or a guy who was an accountant for 50 years can teach you the fundamentals of economics. And he can do it in a class full of 6 people instead of 60. Kids who are pre-selected by their parents to want to learn, and they'll get the best education on the face of the earth. So this is how we're going to beat these people, by setting up these parallel structures. You know what that costs, by the way? Department of Education spends $300 billion. You chart their spending goes like this. Test scores go like that. The more money the Department of Education spends, the worse kids do. This kind of solution costs, and it's not done by Washington. It's not even done in Rochester. It's done in southeastern Rochester. It's done in a neighborhood of Rochester. That's the local dispersed system. You find the people on the internet and off you go. These people in Washington are terrified of this. Terrified. If your kids are going to get 1,600 on their test scores because you've used the retired people who live on your street to give them an actual education, what do you need a Department of Education for?